grew up in New York, in Rockland County, New York. I was born in California, moved to New York when I was real little, and I was a introverted little punk. I was very unlikable, and my best friend was my cat, and I like music a lot, and Legos.
I was introverted too, I guess, yeah. That's funny. The more musicians you meet, the more they have the same sort of story about, oh, I had a not sheltered, but just very isolated and closed off childhood, you know, which is why they pick up the instrument in the first place. I guess I was the same too. My best friend was my brother, who's only 2 years younger than me, who's now our lighting guy. I grew up in the Philippines, Subic Bay, Philippines. I'm an Air Force brat and Navy brat. So yeah, I had kind of a isolated childhood. My family was very supportive, but yeah, I think, you know, not being the most popular kid in school sort of drove me to pursue taking up the guitar.
My mom was always listening to Van Halen, and she always had the cassette tapes, and that's kind of like where I got my first like experience to hearing like heavy drum parts and shreddy guitar. Yeah, Van Halen 1 and Van Halen 2, but she listened to 2 a lot more, so that was the one that I heard a lot more. But then I found myself like taking them out of the car, and she'd call me and be like, "Where are my Van Halen tapes?" And oh yeah, I put them in my Fisher-Price boombox. Sorry, Mom.
For me, it was just hearing my mom's Genesis, Phil Collins, Prince tapes back in the days, back in the 80s. And that's when I first fell in love with music, you know, like all that music is still very close to me, and I have a special place, it has a special place in my heart. But in terms of learning the guitar and in terms of dissecting music and heavy metal, it was definitely Metallica. Definitely Metallica. Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets are still my 2 favorite metal albums of all time, and those were the first 2 things where I really just dove headfirst into it. I was like, I'm going to spend hours working on this and imitating it and just basically worshiping every aspect of it. And I still kind of do to an extent. Mine came at the age of 13, and it was a really terrible, crappy, I think it was Korean made or something. It's like an $80 guitar with a speaker built into the body. It was a really bad guitar, but my dad's a really great guy for getting me that guitar, and then I learned on that thing. So yeah, it was not a good guitar.
My aunt played guitar in the all-female thrash band Mean Streak in the 80s, and she had this Jackson Model 6, I think it was, and it was like kind of like this dark magenta metallic, can't really describe it, and it was like a set neck, and the whole thing was painted this color, and it had an ebony fretboard, and it even had like a little skull like on the whammy bar. Like it was like the most metal, sweetest guitar that like a kid could get like for his first guitar. So thank you, Aunt Rena, that was very nice of you.
You know, I love my job, I love what we do, and I take it very, very seriously, but for so long I always treated it as like a pipe dream, to a point where like it was my main hobby, you know, and I loved it so much as my hobby, and I think that love really turned and translated into drive when it became a reality, when this became my profession. So I don't think there was ever a point where I was just like, I want to do this, this is the only thing I want to do. I always wanted to do other things, but my love for doing music never died, you know, and I think that was what, that's the most essential part of, I think, of why I'm here. I just never let that love die, and I see a lot of people who let that flame burn out because their expectations are completely dashed or destroyed when they don't make it, or when they don't play the show they want to play, or when they don't get the girl they want to get because the band broke up or whatever. Yeah, can't let the love die. That's the most important part.
I always wanted to play guitar and be in a band, but I didn't know how realistic it was. I just kept practicing and kept focusing on it. But there was a moment where I distinctly remember making that decision, like, okay, yep, that's what I want to do. And it was 2004, and I was at this hardcore festival that I didn't want to go to. It was in Poughkeepsie, New York, and I went because my friend asked me to go, and I just wanted to be like a good wingman. And they had all these venues were like connected. They were in the same building, and they opened them all up. So you kind of just went from room to room with watching like endless hardcore breakdowns. So I was really bored. We move into the next venue, and there are all these like dorky dudes setting up like Mesa amps, and they had Ibanez guitars, and like one of them was wearing a Michael Bolton t-shirt. Guess who that is? Anyways, so I'm like, all right, I think this is gonna sound different. So I paid real close attention, and as soon as the first song kicked in, I look behind me, and there's like a sea of kids in this tiny bar just like pushing us like way into this band, and it was just like the most intense like metal show I've ever been to, with like no sound. Like it was just like there was no PA or anything except for the vocals, and it was between the Buried and me, like when they were like just like touring like really small stages. And after I saw that show, I'm like, yep, that's what I want to do. I want to cause kids to go crazy.
You need to have the right personnel to even consider self-producing. Like the only reason we do it is, one, there's trust. And I'm not just talking about trust like, hey, babysit my kid. I'm talking about like trust that takes years to forge. So you need that, and you also need to have people who are sort of tailor-made for the type of job they're going to be assigned. Like we know in the band who's going to be the producer, who's going to be the engineer, who's going to do exactly what in the band. So self-producing is not quite as daunting when done that way. Disadvantages. What are disadvantages?
You know, I think like what people might find as disadvantages are advantageous to us. You know, like if you go to an outside producer or you go to a studio that producer works at, you kind of have like this somebody doing it for you, somebody kind of like telling you that your takes are good or they're not good. Whereas with us, we're very specific on what we like to do, so we like maintaining that control. A lot of people might find that to be aggravating because they don't want to have to rely on their own ear to do it. That's why they pay the other guy to do it. So it might take a little longer to self-produce, but for us, that's what works because we have the type of people in the band that are capable of that. Like patience, understanding, discipline. Like these are things that are very like fundamental character traits. I don't think like I've reached a point where I'm like, this is like a benchmark, or like, you know, like I want to keep going. It's like it's not a point. It's just it's a gradual increase of quality of life, quality of music, a relationship with my bandmates that I enjoy and is a good healthy thing. You know, that's kind of like what's important to us.